historical scientific fact number one. Contagion. Take some sick people, expose them to well people. The well people are supposed to get sick. That's what we're told. These things, viruses, germs, fly through the air. They're deadly. Sneezing, breathing, coughing, being within 6 feet of someone who has this deadly thing. Supposedly we can catch it and we're going to get sick and die. That's the story. They've tried to prove this hundreds of times. All of them have failed. It's never been demonstrated that contagion is a real phenomenon. In fact, exactly the opposite. It's been disproven. There's this book, Can You Catch a Cold? Where Daniel Roydus goes over hundreds of these studies and explains how it's never been shown to be a real thing. Scientific historical fact number two. We're told that these viruses are found, discovered. That's not at all what they do. The steps that virologists do is they take a sample from a human being who's sick. They centrifuge it, filter it, then they put it on a cell culture of monkey kidney cells with antibiotics, bovine calf serum, other substances. The point is that it's a mixture of stuff. They didn't separate out this tiny particle all by itself. They reduce the nutrients which feeds the culture breaks down, it decays. Then they claim that the decay, the dying of the culture is proof there's a virus in there. The term they came up with to describe this is called CPE, cytopathic effect. And the problem with this is that when they do a scientific control, which means they do all the same steps without a human sample, they get the same results, which basically disproves the whole thing. And even the guy who came up with it, Enders, he said, when we didn't add the heavy metals and did the staining and all this, we got the same results. And another microbiologist, Stefan Lanka, has done controls with just yeast and with other materials, and he got the same results. That method has proven flawed, yet they still use it. And so that's why they try to steer us towards the more technical stuff, which is like the PCR test, antigen test, genomics, or sequencing. The problem with all of these is they assume there's a virus in there to begin with. So there's no gold standard. The other problem with all these, they don't do controls. By that I mean, you send these labs 5 samples. Let's say one's lung cancer patient, one person has pneumonia, one person is declared to have COVID, somebody else is declared to have the flu, somebody else is said to have a cold. You blindly label these vials. You send it off to the lab and you say, okay, tell us which one's which. And they should be able to do that. And then you repeat it. You send it to other labs with different samples, and they should be able to tell you which one's which. That's science. That's how you prove that this thing is its own entity. And then if we move on to the science of vaccinology, well, there's no proof that these viruses exist and actually do these things. They can't tell one from the other. So how are they going to make a vaccine for something they can't find, they can't prove exists? Like, how do you do that? How do you make a unicorn repellent if you don't have a unicorn, or you don't even know what a unicorn looks like? You're just making it up. How do you do that? Like, logically, how? The way they make a vaccine is the same way they do the cell culture. In other words, they take a sample, monkey kidney, the bovine calf serum, the antibiotics, all these things that they put in there. Sometimes they add formaldehyde, sometimes they add aluminum, sometimes they add mercury. That's what's in a vaccine. That is the vaccine. They took a cell culture muck soup and then they declared this is the cure. You inject yourself with this and it'll stop these things that we've never found, that we don't know what they look like, and we're just making it up. I mean, for me, I'd want more proof than that. I'd want actual tests. So that brings us to, have they ever safety tested any of these vaccines? And the answer is no. Long-term, double-blind, comparing vaccinated to unvaccinated over the course of 10, 20, 30 years. They haven't done it, or if they have done it, they haven't published it. There have been some doctors who have looked at their own patient data, and they found that the vaccinated kids were sicker than the unvaccinated, or the unvaccinated kids are healthier. Where's a long-term test? The CDC, NIH, they probably have this data. Why haven't they published it? Where is it? Like a full vaccine-scheduled group of people to fully unvaccinated. Those populations are out there. They exist. Like, why haven't they done those tests to see what the long-term outcome is? What's kind of shady, or super shady, is when pharma supposedly does vaccine safety tests. Often they compare one vaccine to another. In other words, they invent a new vaccine and they do their so-called safety tests by comparing an old vaccine to the new vaccine. And as long as there aren't more health adverse effects or more dangerous outcomes, more deaths, injuries, they say, oh, it's safe. But they're not actually comparing it to nothing, to a placebo, to an inert thing that doesn't harm people. They're saying this punch in the face is just as safe as this other punch to the face, instead of saying, well, where's the people you didn't punch in the face? That would be a logical test. You test the thing against something that's nothing, but they haven't done that. Like, if you actually read these so-called safety studies, it's against some other drug or some other product. So how is that scientific?